Hello and welcome to our very special episode of Back Nine Report. This is our Masters preview. It's Masters week. Guys, it's always a highlight of the year. I'm here with May and Kieran Clark. We're going to break down some of the top storylines in the Masters today. There was a little bit of action last weekend in golf. Brooks Koepka, you remember him. I vaguely remember this guy. He won this little event down in Orlando on the LIV Tour, whatever that is. Corey Connors won the Valero Texas Open. Canada speaking up there. And then Mike, you were out in LA for the LPGA tournament. What'd you see out there?
So a lot of great golf, and the winner, I believe, was a lady who was a Monday qualifier. So again, the depth of the LPGA Tour amazes me, and for the second straight week, Georgia Hall from England is the runner-up, just missing a putt on 18 to send it to extra holes. But good stuff out there with the LPGA.
Hey guys, talking about the Masters. Whenever we talk about the Masters, we got to talk about traditions. We all know the Masters has traditions. They do the same things every year. It's the same course. We like that. We have the three guys out on the tee starting on Thursday morning to hit the first shots. We have the pimento cheese sandwiches, the par three on Wednesday afternoon, the Butler cabin presentation, and more and more and more. Guys, I'm going to ask each other. Kieran, I'm going to ask you first. What's your favorite tradition from the Masters?
Tradition. Well, it is just a golf tournament after all. I mean, it is almost treated like a religious ceremony or religious event.
Wait a minute. You're saying that the Masters and Augusta National is not a religious experience? Come on.
Well, it's obviously it's the Masters tournament or the tournament, as they used to always say. That older Hootie Johnson used to always say there. But you know what? Actually, I think my favorite tradition, if you want to call it that, would actually be the honorary starters on the Thursday morning. Because I think that is a unique thing in the game where it sets a place of history. It grounds us into where we are, and you obviously see these legendary figures through the generations, going back to obviously Baron Nelson and Gene Sars and right through to the present day. Obviously, Arnold Palmer was there for a long time as well. And to me, it's a way of celebrating the legends and celebrating the history of the game, really the professional game. And it's also a degree of poignancy about it as well, I think, because I know Gary Player likes to sort of defy Father Time and all the rest of it, but these guys do get older every single year, and there's a lot of emotion to that first tea ceremony, and I think that really sets the week off in a really special way. Obviously a lot of the Masters things are not to kind of play on the pimento cheese, but they are very cheesy. It's a little bit syrupy, a little bit too reverential at times.
Don't tell Fred Ridley that.
And he's got a great head of hair, so I can't knock the guy too much. But yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of that, a little bit too much at times, a little bit manufactured. But I do think that first tea ceremony on the Thursday morning really sets the week up really well. And again, it's a great moment, a great piece of history. And I say it's emotional for good, in a good way. So no, I think that's my favorite Masters tradition, if you can call it that.
Mike, what about you? Same question.
I like its traditional simplicity. The logo says everything. It is an internationally recognized symbol, but to sort of take what Kieran said, I just like the fact that former champions are allowed to continue to play, so we can see Sandy Lyle, we can see Fred Couples, and it prevents an interesting storyline, at least for a few holes or maybe a round or two. These players realize that when they can't keep up with the younger players, they step aside. But I love how we can bridge the past to the present, and it keeps the tradition of the Masters. It's not just a young guys game, even though young guys, generally speaking, will win. So I think we might have a winner who's in his 30s this year, but we'll get to that later. But I love the champions. They can play if they want, and just the simplicity of the invitations that you see. We all know what's going to go on, when it's going to go on, where it's going to go on, and we're disappointed if it's not that way the next year, but it never changes. So that's what's refreshing about Augusta.
Yeah, it's just it's the first major of the year. We have to wait several months after the Open Championship now to get around to the Masters. So it is the first of four majors, and so I think that builds the anticipation a little bit more. So, guys, I got some things here I want to talk about, some top storylines, and Tiger obviously going to try and play. That's the biggest story. But coming in this week, we have another story that developed with Brooks Koepka winning the LIV event in Orlando last weekend. He's missed a cut in the last 2 years at the Masters while dealing with injury, but was runner-up in 2019. Excuse me, and T7 in 2020. Augusta seems to fit his game if he's healthy. What do you guys think his odds are? Michael, I'll let you answer first. What's Brooks Koepka's odds of winning the Masters this week?
I think extremely high. Anytime Brooks is winning anywhere in the world, that means he's healthy. And if he's healthy physically, I think mentally he's strong. And I think he would like to go prove the fact that just because he left the PGA Tour, his game has not left the PGA Tour. And actually, it allows him to pick up some world ranking points because he's not picking up any on the LEV and he can with the Masters. So Brooks is very much a threat, and he is someone you need to keep your eye on, and he'll don't be surprised to see him in the top 5 or even the winner's circle on Sunday afternoon. If we do finish on Sunday, based on the weather predictions, which are not good.
Yeah, guys. So Kieran, Brooks has shown that he can play this golf course, and evidently appears to be healthy. So a win here would give him a 5-year exemption into all the majors and all the big tournaments. So he could go keep playing the LIV and just jump over and play the majors when he wants to, if he happen to win here.
Oh yeah, it's obviously a huge opportunity. But I think for Brooks Koepka, obviously, people can debate the merits of beating the field that he did at the weekend there, but I think it's really important for him because obviously for 2 or 3 years he was the man to beat in the 4 majors. He seemed to be there all the time, had this ability to elevate his game, and he seemed to thrive off trying to beat the other top players. Then, of course, the pandemic came. He had some injuries, and I think actually he lost a little bit of self-belief. And I think that's been quite apparent. Where if you go back to the Netflix show earlier in the year, he talked about he didn't think he could possibly compete with Scotty Scheffler, for example. He began to doubt himself. Obviously, playing better will give him some confidence. And this week will be a great indication for him as to where his game is actually at. Because while he's obviously played well, he's won a tournament, he's won a lot of money there, played well under pressure. He hasn't faced the absolute deep fields of top guys for a while now. But certainly mentality wise, you can't knock him. He's one of the best players in these big occasions, has always been for the last 4 or 5 years. And I think coming into this week, with that confidence from the weekend behind him, he could absolutely be a threat.
So we're kind of agreed. Brooks could be a threat this week, especially coming off a big win. But there's another guy we got to talk about. We got to talk about this guy. We've seen him play one time this year and stumble around and make the cut in LA at his Genesis tournament. Tiger's going to be in the field. Kieran, what can we expect from Tiger this week? Is he going to make the cut or no? Is he going to challenge? Is he going to be a factor?
Well, I mean, I never want to be the person to kind of rule Tiger out of doing anything because obviously he's done some of the most extraordinary things that any of us have ever seen. I think he will make the cut. He made the cut last year when he came, completely cold and, was really struggling over that last, day to get around the golf course. And he still made the cut there. And I think he's in a better place right now with his game and also physically. Obviously there will be limitations to what he can do physically. He's admitted that himself. Today at the Masters, he's spoken about how he's not sure how many more he'll have left to play. Because obviously it takes a great deal of effort for him to even be in a position to play a competitive round of golf. But no, I think Tiger Woods, his knowledge of the golf course, his experience, he still hits some fantastic shots, and I think that will count for a lot. So I think he will make the cut and play all 4 days. How much of a factor he will be on the leaderboard, however, I'm not so sure. I could see him perhaps having a good first couple of days and maybe kind of sliding away a little bit. But, I think Tiger will make the cut. And, I'll say he'll finish in the top 25 because we have to remember that the Masters tournament is by far the smallest field of the year in the majors. And it's, by far the least, deep field in terms of the players that can actually win. There's probably only really 70 guys you would assume, discounting the former champions that Mike mentioned earlier and obviously all the amateur players. It's really, you don't have to beat too many guys to do well here. And I think Tiger has more than enough in his game still to do well here. But I think this finally on that point, Fred, would be, Tiger said himself today about not having many more Masters to play in. I think if you're a Tiger Woods fan or even just a golf fan who loves what he's done through the years in the game and been amazed by his extraordinary achievements, I think it's time to savor whenever you see Tiger Woods playing, because we're definitely into the latter stages of seeing Tiger being a factor in any level in these big events. So yeah, enjoy it while you have him there, because obviously he's done amazing things, and that can never be taken away from him.
Mike, same question. What do you expect to see from Tiger this week?
I think it really all is going to depend on Mother Nature. I looked at the weather forecast last night on weather.com, and it's the wettest prediction that I think I've ever seen in my life. And in fact, I would not be surprised if we have a Monday finish. So I think it's going to be a longer golf course for Tiger. It's going to be a tougher walk. Yes, he's used to playing in all sorts of conditions, but I think it's fair to say that in his practicing, he doesn't go out and practice in the rain. He doesn't go walk in the rain. And I'm just concerned about a slip with it being so steep. And I think that if the course was dry and fast and warm, he can probably deal with colder conditions better than he can the wet, because the wet is going to impede his balance and his stability. And it's going to make a long walk even longer. And he only has so many steps in that body for 18 holes over 4 days. So I'll be delighted if he makes the cut. I won't be surprised if he makes the cut because he's Tiger. But then again, if he misses the cut, I won't be surprised either, because the moisture on this golf course could be rather significant. And the worst day may well be Saturday, but you got to make the cut by Saturday if we even get that far. So this is a dicey situation. Warm and dry, he's making the cut. Easily be top 25. It's going to really draw upon his mental ability to overcome the impact of Mother Nature. So it'll be a fun Masters to watch, and I think weather conditions will favor the bigger players who can hit it further, because you need that extra distance.
Guys, there's another guy. There's another guy I want to talk about in just a minute. In his last LIV events, Phil Mickelson finished 27th, 32nd, and 41 out of 48 players. Not very impressive, guys. It's going to be a media circus around Phil at Augusta. He said he will not address the media directly. Augusta is probably a good place for Phil to be returning to the PGA Tour event, because the Masters restricts media contacts with the players during the week. They got a lot of rules there at Augusta National. Mike, what do you expect to see out of Phil Mickelson?
I think that we're having more discussion here about Phil than what we'll have during the tournament. I think because of the Masters rules, which will favor Phil. And I think that, frankly, there's more of a competitive storyline with Fred Couples, who's older than Phil. I think Phil's game is not where it should be, could be. And he has become such a unique individual on the LIV Tour, and almost become sort of not even talked about. He's not even concerned with the players. He's there because he's earned the right to be there as a three-time champion. But I think the odds of Phil making the cut are probably more difficult higher than Tiger.
Kieran, same question.
Yeah, I mean, I think Phil's shown absolutely no indication that he can be competitive here. But of course, he obviously has got a fabulous record at Augusta National. He does come to life on this golf course. But from what we've seen from him on the LIV Tour, and to be honest with you, even in his latter PGA Tour career, his win at the PGA Championship 2 years ago was obviously extraordinary and historic, but it really did come out of nowhere. If I remember correctly, he didn't have a single top 10 that year apart from that win at the PGA at Kiawah Island. So his game has not been there week to week for a long time now. He's obviously had a lot of distractions off the golf course, a lot of negative publicity. That's probably had an impact too. Maybe there's a degree of vulnerability that wasn't there before with Mickelson, and obviously a very complicated figure. Divides opinion, of course, but there's no doubt that on this golf course through the decades, he's been obviously a magician. But I agree with Mike. I mean, I think I don't really see Mickelson being a factor whatsoever. If he makes the cut, then it'll be narrowly, and he'll probably finish at the bottom of the field by the end of the weekend. But it's a shame because And perhaps it's kind of the sadness of these past few years where, as a golf fan, whether you like Phil Mickelson or not, there's also a degree of excitement around him at Augusta National because he could do anything here. The golf course was made for his creative, imaginative game, and there's no doubt he's one of the most creative golfers that we've ever seen. And this was a perfect canvas for him for so long. So it's kind of sad that we have kind of a diminished Phil Mickelson in so many respects. And so even from a sentimentality standpoint, it would be nice to see him actually, do something decently as it would be with Tiger Woods, because you want to see your legends, your great players do well. No one wants to watch these guys struggle and flounder. But I agree with Mike. I don't see Mickelson being much of a factor this week. And I do think in terms of senior golfers, I'm not sure about Fred Couples doing that well either, but I think guys like Fred are obviously playing more golf and seem to be playing better golf consistently than even Mickelson is right now. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I think the days of Tiger and Phil seemingly being on that leaderboard every year, every April at Augusta, I think those days are gone. And obviously so many great memories of those two playing so well here. But for one reason or another, whether it be age or circumstance or injury, the days of Tiger and Phil, this being their playground. Those days I think have more or less gone.
Yeah, I think we can all agree on that. Be interesting to see what they do, but do not expect much from them. A guy that we can all agree is a factor, should be a factor this week. He's been playing at a very high level all year. He's been 1, 2, or 3 in the world golf ranking for a little over a year, probably. Is this the year that Rory gets a green jacket? He was runner-up last year, has 7 top tens in his last 9 starts at Augusta. Kieran, what do you think about Rory's chances this week?
Well, they're always very strong because of how good he is and how much this golf course seems to kind of fit his game. I think last year is actually really significant because he finished that event so fabulously with that 64 on Sunday, hold the bunker shot on 18. What a moment that was. And it was the first time that he's really left Augusta, really probably in his career, actually satisfied with his week's work and actually happy because, in previous years, he obviously had the crushing disappointment back in 2011 and 2018 when he lost to Patrick Reed in the final group, had a poor last day there. And in the other years, he has finished top 10, but has been really after a slow start. But last year, he left with real positivity and obviously carried that into the rest of 2022 and obviously played brilliantly for much of that last year. Didn't quite win a major, of course, his best chance coming at St Andrews, but didn't happen from there. So he comes to Augusta this week, Fred, obviously, with that anticipation, the expectation on his shoulders, obviously, with a career Grand Slam being there, which I think if he was to win the Masters, Fred, it would change Rory McIlroy from being just a great player, a generational player, into becoming a legendary player to win all 4 majors. I think that would be a very unique place to be. I think as a story, it's hard to beat that one this week, and I always kind of root for the story. I think Rory McIlroy has such a strong profile in the game. But of course, we're talking more or less almost a decade since he actually won a major, which seems incredible. I think it would have been a great moment for him had he won at St Andrews last year. It would have been a great moment for the game as well when you have probably your highest profile, modern player being successful. And I think this week would be very similar to that too. So I think for the game of golf, it'd be a great story for Rory McIlroy. Obviously, it'd be fantastic for him. And can he do it? Absolutely, he can. And Mike's touched on the weather forecast, obviously with the rain coming in as the week goes on. Rory McIlroy, obviously the longest, one of the longest hitters in the game, hits his irons really high. So it seems you think that ticks a lot of boxes for him, but it also ticks a lot of boxes for a lot of players. I think actually the golf course being wetter makes it easier for more players because most of these guys now hit the ball a very long way. I think the golf course is at its trickiest when it's firm and fast with a little bit of breeze. If that's not going to be there, it becomes a little bit more responsive than what it would be otherwise. But obviously those responsive players, that's kind of the diet for the PGA Tour these days, kind of target golf. And Rory McIlroy is, I think, arguably the best exponent of that style of golf. So it does point to him having a really strong week. But of course, there are some other, Fred, some other huge contenders who can easily be in this conversation too.
Mike, what do you think Rory's odds for getting that green jacket and completing his career Grand Slam this week?
Well, first of all, I want to congratulate Kieran. He and I are on the same wavelength. I jotted down a note about with this weather, and I know I've been talking about the weather, but it's going to be very, very wet. And where did Rory McIlroy grew up Northern Ireland. That's the king of wet. I think he's going to be more comfortable in a wet Augusta than he will a dry, fast Augusta. Again, Kieran mentioned if there's anyone better than Rory McIlroy target golf in the conditions of wet, let me know who that is, because he's right up there. Also, there's been so much discussion with Liv and Phil, and now Brooks is healthy, and Tiger. So many other storylines are dominating the media scene. We're not really dwelling on Rory's attempt to win Masters as much as we have in the last 3 or 4 years. So the focus is not so much on Rory. If it gets wet, he's going to be actually like a duck in water, and it may be the right venue, the right time, right conditions for Rory McIlroy to pick up that green jacket, which, in my opinion, may not happen until Tuesday, but we'll see. I'll be surprised if we finish on Sunday, and I'll be surprised if it's dry.
We've talked about some pretty big names so far for this week at the Masters. Of course, we got to get to the favorites. Rounding out kind of the top 10, the world golf ranking right now, we got Jordan Spieth, Justin Thomas, Scotty Scheffler, Xander Schauffele, Colin Morikawa, John Ram, Patrick Cantlay, and Max Homa. Mike, I'll give this question to you first. Of this group, Spieth, JT, Scheffler, Xander, Colin, Ram, Cantlay, and Homa, who do you think has the best chance of taking home the win this week?
Well, I could be selfish as a gambler, say, give me those and I'll give you the rest, and I'll probably win. But Rahm is he's a little bit off the boil, so to speak. He's not as strong as he was a couple of months ago. I think Scheffler's training the right conditions, but I think this weather situation is really going to expand the number of players who could win, and that's why I'm very optimistic that someone like Cam Smith could do well. He's never had a bad round here at Augusta, and he's of course a reigning Open champion. I think he's playing with Scheffler on Thursday or whenever they start. But of those guys you mentioned, I like Justin Thomas the most. But I'm really going to keep an eye on the weatherman and see what he has to say. And I think Augusta National is going to be quite wet, and then it's okay, anybody's guess. I mean, remember, I think Zach Johnson, when he won a few years ago, that was a wet Masters, which I think shortened a lot of the par fives, which made Zach's wedge game that much more important. And he came in and won that year. So I like the favorites, but Mother Nature may have someone else in mind.
Kieran, of these players, you got any thoughts on them?
Well, all of the above. I mean, they're all potential winners, and none of them would be a surprise. I mean, I think Max Homa has obviously become a proven winner. Seems to really enjoy classic style golf courses, obviously at Riviera and so on. So he's someone I wouldn't be surprised to see. Jordan Spieth obviously is a specialist around here. The one thing with Jordan Spieth, though, I kind of fear that while he'll make a lot of birdies, there's always going to be that killer shot in there in his game. So I think he'll certainly contend. But I just don't really think over 4 days he quite has the consistency to edge out the likes of McIlroy and Ram and even Scotty Scheffler. I mean, it seems quite boring to kind of tip the defending champion, but I think Scotty Scheffler is just an unbelievable player. I mean, he's almost having like an identical.
He's got that great short game that could really show up, especially if the conditions are wet.
Yeah, he's got a great all-round game. I mean, he's just so good, and he's got a great temperament and everything else. And he's got obviously this real ability to win. He's having almost an identical season to what he had last year when he came out really strong and won 4 out of 6 events last year, including the Masters. And he's obviously done very similar this year, of course, winning the Players' Championship and so on. So I think Scotty Scheffler has the best chance in a long time to be a successfully defending champion. We're going back to Tiger back in 2002 as the last person to win back-to-back. And it's a very rare company that's done that. I mean, I think you're going back to, Faldo did it, and I think Jack Nicklaus did it, and I think that's it. So I think, Scheffler could easily join those guys. So I think, quite to answer you, I think the guy that beats Scotty Scheffler will be the one that wins the Masters. I think he's going to be right up there going into the last day. And, it might start stalling. It could be any day. Who knows? It could be the biggest uncertainty of it all. But let's just say, unconfidently it'll finish on Sunday. And if you're ahead of Scotty Scheffler on Sunday, I think you might very well be putting on that green jacket or having him put that green jacket around you, because he's going to be really hard to beat, I think.
Somebody that's been playing pretty well of late is a veteran that's been around. He has a major. What about Jason Day? Kieran, you got any thoughts on Jason Day being a factor here at Augusta?
Well, I'm really pleased to see him back playing well because you go back 7 or 8 years ago, he was alongside McIlroy and Spieth, one of the top three players in the world. Obviously got number one. He won his major at the PGA at Whistling Straits, and then of course it kind of tailed off from there. There's obviously been some injury problems, some health issues. Obviously, there's been the personal issues with the tragic death of his mother. And you kind of felt that he was almost going to become sort of like a David Duval figure, where you thought this guy's going to be the man to beat for years, and then he just kind of disappears. So I'm glad to see he's kind of fought back and he's played some fantastic golf this year, really consistent. He's got himself right back in the conversation, and he's got a great record here at Augusta National. He missed the Masters last year. He spoke on Monday about how disappointing it was. He really quite enjoyed watching it on TV for a change. Obviously, doesn't have that opportunity usually because he's in it. But I think he'll be glad to be back in it this year. And I think he'll certainly have a good chance of playing well. I mean, obviously, him going from where he's been to winning the Masters is quite a big leap, a great story. But I think he will be in the mix. I think he'll be in the conversation going into the weekend. Just whether he quite has the kind of the competitiveness in terms of being used to winning. It's been a long time for him, and maybe that will count for something. But in terms of ability and what he can do, I mean, on his day at his best, he's as good as anyone. And I think the best way to kind of judge all these players is, at their very best, who is the best. And I think Jason Day is, easily at his very best in the top 10 in the world still. And I think he's shown that so far this year. And I think he'll probably underline that status this week. Not sure he's going to win, but I think he'll play well.
Mike, same question. What's your thoughts on Jason Day's excellent years so far and any chance of winning the Masters?
I've been watching Jason in recent weeks. In fact, he's one of my top four picks for the Masters, and I can reveal my other three ones later in our conversation. But Jason, again, is coming in under the radar screen. When he's been playing well in the past, he's been at the top of the radar screen. He's even he's not talked about as much as Koepka is, who, well, of course, just came out that win. But I think Jason's, if he's healthy, if he's physically well, he's mentally well. Again, having missed last year makes him that little bit more hungry to do well. And I'll be shocked and surprised if we will see a top 10 performance from Jason Day. And wouldn't surprise me at all to see Scheffler, who's actually one of those famous Texans. I think we've had 12 Texas winners over there, going back to the days of Ralph Gouldall and Jimmy DeMeritt, Nelson, Hogan, etc. So it might be a Texan putting his hands on the jacket to put on the hands of the Australian Day.
Guys, we've been talking about the older guys a little bit. I want to talk about two younger guys here. Will Zalatoris is back up to number 8 in the world, and Victor Hovland is number 9. They have to be the best of these young guys in the field right now. Mike, what's your thoughts on Will Zalatoris and Victor Hovland?
Zalatoris is a horse for this course, and you could call him Secretariat. He is ready to win. He's healthy. And Victor Hovland is, again, if he's mentally there, he's physically there. Again, we have so many great players, and we're also excited about this first major. You could put a number of names in there. If you pull out Hovland and Zalatoris, those easily could be your top 2 finishers on Sunday or whenever we finish this golf tournament. So we can all speculate, we can all guesstimate, but don't be shocked if we see two strong performances by those two gentlemen.
Kieran, same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think Zalatoris, Mike touched on it there. He's got this brilliant ability to play well in tough golf courses, and I think that's a sign of a fantastic player. He performs on the biggest stages of all. There's always that kind of question mark around his putting, which certainly looks worse than what the stats would suggest that it is. You watch his stroke at times; it looks a bit unconventional to say the least. But obviously, some great putters through the years have been quite unconventional. He's not a great putter, but he's adequate. And generally speaking, I mean, the winners of the Masters and any major really tend to be, the best ball strikers, and then the guy that puts best of those ball strikers that particular week. So Zalatoris is very capable of doing well here. Victor Hovland, I'm not so sure. I mean, I think there's a degree of he's slightly stalled a little bit, I think, in his progress this year. Again, very capable, very talented. Just maybe lacks a little bit of an edge to do well here, I think, in terms of winning it. I think the one young player we haven't mentioned, actually there's 2 of them, would stand out to me would actually be Sam Burns. and Cameron Young as being two real standout players. So I actually might even put those two ahead of these other two in terms of being the younger guys that could really contend here. Obviously, Sam Burns just winning the match play. Cameron Young, who seems to finish second all the time. I remember watching him make the eagle in the last at St Andrews last year. What a moment that was! So much power. Now got an experienced caddy on the bag. Uh, I think there's a lot to like about those two guys. So, while obviously Augusta tends to require a degree of experience, we all talk about how rookies don't win here. It requires at least 4 or 5 goals before you can win the Masters. That has historically been the case. I think the average age of a Masters champion is 31 and a half. So that would imply an older player than these guys. But in terms of the younger players, the guys in their mid 20s, I like Young and Burns as being the two. I think those two are going under the radar and could easily usurp and surprise the likes of McIlroy and Scheffler.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought them up. That was my error for not getting them in there. That's a good point. Other than Koepka, who we've already talked about, who are the best LIV guys in the field? DJ or Cam Smith? Kieran?
Well, I mean, I think Dustin Johnson is a standout. I think he's actually a bigger standout than Koepka because obviously he's won here. He's the one guy that has really kind of gone through this whole, controversy over the past year, kind of untroubled because he said, I'm going to live for this reason. I'm taking the money. I'm playing less. I'm happy with my life. He hasn't tried to sue anybody. He hasn't been criticizing anybody in the press. He's just kind of got on with his life. And I think that serenity is a big plus for him. And I think he'll enjoy being back here as a past champion, playing against all these players. And Dustin Johnson, ability wise, is objectively one of the top 5 or 6 players in the world. On his day, at his very best, is he number one? Maybe not quite right now, but he's definitely up there. And so I think he's absolutely a contender. And I think if any live player is going to win the Masters this week, it will be him. Obviously, Cam Smith is a bit of an interesting case because obviously last year was extraordinary, and really he should be in the conversation right now. With McIlroy, McIlroy, Ram, and Scheffler as being one of the top 4 players in the world. Obviously, circumstances have dictated that hasn't been the case with moving to live, and he hasn't really played that well in live either. He hasn't done anything particularly spectacular. But Mike touched on his record at Augusta, which is obviously fabulous. He's got an unbelievable putting stroke, so he's always going to have a chance of scoring well, make lots of birdies around here. I just don't know with Smith right now. It's a big question mark to me around his. Has he got the desire? I don't know. I mean, he seems to. He's obviously fulfilled his dreams last year, winning at Sawgrass, winning the Open at St Andrews. A career year for some of the greatest players in the game. It's been a shame we haven't seen him quite carry that on with these other guys this year. And that's kind of the tragedy of this whole split in the game where we're not seeing all these guys together. But this week we are, and that might bring the best out of Cam Smith. But in terms of a particular name, Fred, for me, Dustin Johnson is the standout of the 18 live players in the field.
Mike, we're down to less than a minute to go here, and I need to get your top guys. Give me your top guys real quick.
Top 5: Sam Burns, DJ Cantlay, Jason Day, and Cam Smith.
Nice. What about you, Kieran?
I'm just going to say Rory McIlroy will have the green jacket whenever it actually ends, and he'll be the Masters champion, career Grand Slam champion, and unquestionably becoming a true legend of the game.
Thanks a lot, guys. Really appreciate coming on board for this Masters preview. Until next time, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Well,